The night air was crisp and unusually still, the kind of quiet that makes the faintest sound seem amplified. Colonel Maya Harrison drove down the Virginia highway, her hands steady on the wheel, her uniform impeccable, her medals reflecting the soft glow of the dashboard. She had just left a Pentagon briefing that had run late into the evening, where discussions of strategy and operations still spun in her mind. She allowed herself a brief sigh, hoping the drive back to the base would be uneventful. But then the blue and red lights flashed behind her, abrupt and sharp in the rearview mirror. Something was wrong. A cruiser slid up aggressively, tires squealing softly on the asphalt. The officer emerged, flashlight swinging wildly, illuminating the dark road in shifting arcs. The light glinted off Maya's polished metals. His expression flickered, disbelief, then hardened into disdain. "Step out of the vehicle," he barked, the command sharp, brimming with authority. Maya's hands remained on the wheel. "Sir, may I see your badge?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The officer laughed, harsh and high-pitched, a sound meant to intimidate. "You don't get to talk to me. Hands where I can see them." Before she could comply, he yanked the door open and shoved her onto the cold asphalt. Pain lanced through her shoulders as he twisted her arm behind her back. A jolt of adrenaline shot through her, but training and experience grounded her. She had faced far worse. Missions overseas where every step could be the last, ambushes in foreign lands, operations in hostile territory. Fear tried to rise, but she suppressed it. She would not allow it to control her. She lifted her wrist, revealing her Pentagon-issued ID. The officer glanced at it and sneered. "Fake," he spat. His tone was heavy with assumptions and bias, the arrogance of someone who believed authority could be dismissed if it did not fit his narrow expectations. Maya did not argue. She did not flinch. With a subtle tap of her smartwatch hidden beneath her sleeve, she activated a secret emergency Pentagon protocol. Far away, alarms blared and red lights blinked across monitors in the Pentagon. General Thorne's eyes narrowed as he read the alert. "Colonel Harrison under duress. Mobilize support immediately." The officer moved closer, his face red with frustration. "You're resisting. You're under arrest." Maya's voice remained calm. "I have complied with every instruction you've given." For a moment, fear tried to creep in, but she anchored herself in the words her daughter had whispered earlier that week. "Courage isn't about fighting back. It's about standing steady when everything shakes you." She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. In the distance, a low rumble grew louder. Military police vehicles approached at speed, tires squealing as they skidded into formation. Soldiers jumped out, forming a protective perimeter around her SUV. Helicopters descended, searchlights slicing through the darkness, illuminating every inch of the highway. Dalton froze. He had not expected this. He had not imagined that a single officer's arrogance could trigger a full federal response. Captain Lauren Park approached, voice calm, efficient. "Colonel Harrison, are you injured?" Dalton's arrogance evaporated instantly. The authority he had relied upon was gone, replaced by disciplined, coordinated personnel. Maya inhaled slowly. Her wrists were sore from the cuffs, but her posture remained perfect. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply stood, composed and commanding. "You assumed I was powerless," she said quietly, firmly. "You assumed I could be intimidated. You were wrong." The soldiers removed her cuffs with precise, professional movements. Dalton's panic became visible as the helicopter's spotlight illuminated him. He had underestimated her, the system, and the Pentagon's reach. Back at the base, Maya walked past monitors displaying live feeds, GPS logs, and officer communications from the highway. Every word, every movement, every action was documented and reviewed. Her phone buzzed. Jasmine had sent a message. "Mom? I saw the news. Are you okay?" Maya typed back, "I'm fine. More importantly, I stood my ground. That's what matters." She remembered her first deployment overseas. Then fear had been external, gunfire, explosions, life and death. Tonight, fear was internal, bias, assumptions, arrogance, but her response was identical, precise, measured, unwavering. Dalton sat alone in a stark interrogation room, replaying every moment. Sweat dripped from his brow as internal affairs questioned him on each movement, each word, each decision. The bravado he had relied on for decades vanished, replaced by stark accountability. Meanwhile, General Thorne monitored the situation at the Pentagon. Analysts tracked Dalton's cruiser, the military police, and Maya's smartwatch signals. Every GPS ping, every officer report, every detail logged. "Ensure the investigation is thorough," Thorne said. Bias and misconduct cannot be allowed to stand, especially not against a senior officer. Maya reviewed the footage herself, noting every unnecessary escalation by Dalton. She thought of Jasmine again. If I can survive this, I can show her that courage isn't about fighting with weapons. It's about standing for what's right. Over the next several days, investigators compiled evidence. Dashcam footage, bodycam video, police radio transmissions, and smartwatch logs. Maya provided her account calmly and precisely. Every word true, every motion documented, every action accountable. News agencies obtained the footage and coverage exploded. National headlines described the assault on a black army colonel and the Pentagon's rapid response. Social media erupted. Millions watched clips of Maya standing tall, Dalton shouting, and the military police arriving. Hashtags like #JusticeForColonel Harrison and #AccountabilityMatters trended worldwide. Weeks later, Dalton faced the courtroom. Maya testified, her voice calm and precise. She recounted the events with clarity, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The judge ruled swiftly. Dalton was stripped of his duties, charged with assault, and barred from law enforcement service forever. Weeks later, Maya drove the same highway at sunset. The sky was painted in gold and crimson. Behind her lay chaos, bias, and intimidation. Ahead was clarity, justice, and integrity. She thought of Jasmine and whispered, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite it." The road stretched wide and empty. Colonel Maya Harrison, in uniform, in command, and in life, drove on, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of integrity, resilience, and justice prevailing. The hum of the helicopters overhead filled the night sky, a low, vibrating presence that seemed to echo against the trees lining the Virginia highway. The military police formed a precise arc around Colonel Maya Harrison's SUV, their boots crunching against the gravel shoulder, weapons at the ready, every movement practiced and deliberate. The lights from the helicopters cut through the darkness, bouncing off the asphalt, glinting off Maya's medals, her uniform flawless despite the strain of the encounter. Dalton's panic was palpable. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his hands trembling as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. He had thought he was in control. He had assumed that a uniform alone could intimidate. But here, under the piercing lights, with the weight of the military police surrounding her, he understood he had misjudged completely. Every instinct he had relied on, the arrogance, the assumptions, had failed him. Inside the helicopter, the pilot maneuvered with precision, circling the scene as the spotlight tracked every movement on the ground. Communication buzzed over radios. Every detail was being logged, monitored, and analyzed in real time. The Pentagon's command room was alive with activity. Analysts watched multiple screens, logging GPS data from Maya's smartwatch, radio transmissions, and live camera feeds from the highway. General Thorne leaned over the console, his expression unreadable. "She's not alone," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Make sure every angle is covered. Every detail. Every word. Nothing escapes scrutiny." Maya's mind was calm. Her wrists ached from the earlier restraints, but her breathing remained steady. She reflected on the hundreds of missions she had led overseas. The deserts, the jungles, the mountains where threats had been tangible and immediate. Tonight's threat was different. Tonight, the danger had been invisible until it manifested in bias and assumption. But her response was the same: measured, controlled, unyielding. Dalton finally dropped his aggressive posture, the weight of authority and the arrival of federal response breaking him. He backed away, his eyes darting nervously to the helicopters, the soldiers, and then finally to Maya herself. The realization of his mistake settled deep within him. Back at the Pentagon, the emergency response was already in motion. Investigators combed through live footage, noting every action and reaction. Analysts tagged timestamps, verified movements, and cross-checked communication logs. Each signal from Maya's smartwatch, each dashcam feed, each radio call was monitored meticulously. The operation was precise, methodical, and relentless. Maya stood, observing, analyzing, but never reacting with unnecessary emotion. She considered Dalton's assumptions, how deeply ingrained prejudice can escalate quickly when left unchecked. Her thoughts returned to Jasmine, her daughter. If I stand firm, not for vengeance but for truth, I can show her what courage really means. Dalton's interrogation began hours later. In a stark room with harsh fluorescent lighting, he replayed every movement, every word, every gesture. Internal affairs investigators questioned him methodically, asking him to recount every detail. His mind raced. The bravado he had relied on for decades crumbled, replaced by fear and self-reproach. He muttered excuses, half-formed rationalizations, but the truth was undeniable. Every action had been captured, every escalation documented, and every violation evident. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her quarters, exhaustion creeping into her limbs, but her mind remained alert. She reviewed footage herself, noting Dalton's errors, his lack of judgment, and his disregard for protocol. She thought again of the countless soldiers she had led and the countless moments where calm precision had saved lives. Tonight, that discipline had protected her. Days passed. Investigators compiled evidence. Dashcam recordings, bodycam footage, police radio logs, and smartwatch data. Maya provided her account in detail, precise, and factual. Each statement left no room for ambiguity. Every action she had taken, every step she had followed, was accounted for. Media outlets soon obtained the footage. National coverage ignited almost immediately. Headlines proclaimed, "Black Army Colonel assaulted during traffic stop. Pentagon intervenes." Federal investigation launched after officer detains Colonel without cause. Social media erupted. Millions watched clips of Maya standing calm and resolute, Dalton shouting, and the military police arriving. Hashtags like #Justice for Colonel Harrison, #Military Integrity, and #Accountability Matters trended worldwide. Public opinion was swift and decisive. The world saw courage, precision, and discipline prevailing over bias and arrogance. Maya reflected quietly on the media frenzy. She understood the power of this moment. Not only had she defended herself, but she had set a precedent. Courage, she realized, was not just about confronting physical danger. It was about confronting injustice, bias, and assumption. It was about standing firmly, calmly, and decisively in the face of wrongdoing. Dalton's life began to unravel in parallel. His colleagues whispered, reputation faltered, and every action he had taken was now scrutinized. He realized that assumptions are dangerous, that authority is earned through respect and discipline, not asserted through fear and aggression. As the investigation moved toward the courtroom, the Pentagon coordinated every detail meticulously. Analysts prepared visual evidence, timelines, and logs for the prosecution. Every action, every word, every decision was cataloged. The operation was flawless, leaving Dalton with no space to escape accountability. Maya herself reviewed the preparation, not with anticipation of victory, but with a sense of responsibility. She knew that this was about more than her own experience. It was about setting a precedent for fairness, discipline, and respect. It was about showing the world and her daughter what courage truly looked like. The courtroom was tense when the day finally arrived. Maya stood before the judge, calm, composed, resolute. She recounted every detail of the night: the traffic stop, Dalton's aggression, the unnecessary escalation, the arrival of the military police, the Pentagon's response, and her own actions. Her testimony was precise, unwavering, and undeniable. Every movement, every word had been captured, every action documented. Dalton sat across from her, pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He had prepared statements, rationalizations, and excuses, but they crumbled under the weight of the evidence. He realized too late that authority does not reside in intimidation. It resides in integrity, discipline, and respect for others. The judge ruled swiftly. Dalton was stripped of his duties, charged with assault, and barred from any future law enforcement service. Justice had been served. Weeks later, Maya drove the same highway at sunset. The sky burned with gold and crimson light. Behind her lay chaos, fear, and intimidation. Ahead was clarity, justice, and integrity. She thought of Jasmine and whispered, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite it." The road stretched wide and empty. Colonel Maya Harrison, in uniform, in command, and in life, drove on, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of resilience, integrity, and justice prevailing. The morning of the trial arrived with a crisp chill in the air. Sunlight slanted through the windows of the courthouse, casting long lines across the polished wooden floors. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, almost electric. Every seat was filled, every observer alert, and cameras set up to broadcast proceedings were positioned with surgical precision. This was no ordinary trial. It was a reckoning. Colonel Maya Harrison entered the courtroom, her uniform immaculate, every metal gleaming under the soft lights. She walked with measured steps, shoulders squared, every motion deliberate. Her eyes scanned the room calmly, taking in the judge, the jury, the public, and Dalton, who sat on the defendant's side, his posture slouched, a pale shadow of the officer who had accosted her on the highway weeks earlier. She remembered the night vividly, the flashing lights, the grip of Dalton's hands on her arm, the cold asphalt beneath her, the roar of the helicopters, and the precise coordination of the military police. She remembered fear, yes, but also clarity, the clarity that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you represent. The courtroom clerk called the session to order. The judge's gavel struck sharply, echoing across the room. We are here to hear the case of Officer Dalton regarding the incident on Highway 17 on November 21st. Colonel Maya Harrison will provide testimony regarding her account of the events. Maya rose, her voice steady, calm, and unwavering. She began to recount the night's events in detail. She described Dalton's approach, the unwarranted aggression, the way he had ignored her identification, and the escalating tension that had forced her to take action to ensure her safety. She described the military police's precise arrival, the helicopters circling searchlights, and the coordination that had ensured no harm came to her. Every word was deliberate. Every motion, every flash of expression, every subtle pause was calculated to convey not anger but truth. She did not embellish. She did not dramatize. She narrated the events as they had happened, leaving no room for doubt. Dalton's lawyers attempted to question her credibility, suggesting that the situation had been misinterpreted, that he had acted in good faith. But every claim they made was dismantled by the evidence. Dashcam footage, bodycam videos, police radio transmissions, and smartwatch data, all corroborating her testimony. The jury listened in silence, absorbing the clarity of her narrative, the precision of her words, and the undeniable logic of the evidence. During cross-examination, Dalton himself attempted to speak, stammering, his voice weak. His recollection was shaky, his confidence gone. He had underestimated her, underestimated the military system, and underestimated the inevitability of accountability. The court watched him flounder as Maya remained composed, unwavering, the embodiment of professional courage and dignity. Outside the courtroom, the world had already reacted. Social media was a storm of activity. Clips of the incident circulated endlessly. The initial confrontation, the precision of the military police, Maya standing tall under the spotlight of helicopters, and Dalton's panicked retreat. Hashtags like #Justice for Colonel Harrison, #Accountability Matters, and #Integrity Prevails trended across platforms. News networks dissected the footage, experts analyzed the protocol, and public opinion coalesced around one undeniable fact. Maya had acted with courage, composure, and authority. Inside the courtroom, the judge's gavel struck again, bringing a hush over the room. He addressed the jury, summarizing the evidence with impartial clarity. The jury deliberated, each moment tense, each juror aware that the outcome was not merely legal but symbolic, of fairness, discipline, and integrity prevailing over bias and arrogance. After what felt like hours but was only moments, the jury returned. Dalton was found guilty on all charges: assault, misconduct, and abuse of authority. The judge imposed the maximum penalty allowable, stripping him of his law enforcement credentials and barring him from any future position in the field. Justice had been served. Maya felt no triumph in the verdict itself. Instead, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The law had recognized the truth, the system had acted, and the principles she had dedicated her life to defending had been upheld. She thought again of Jasmine. This is the world I want you to see, a world where courage and integrity matter. Weeks later, the media continued to cover the story. Interviews with Maya were broadcast nationwide. She spoke not with anger but with resolve, describing the importance of accountability, discipline, and respect for authority. She emphasized that courage is not just about confronting physical danger, it is about standing firm in the face of injustice, no matter how invisible it may seem until it strikes. Public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. Community leaders, veterans, law enforcement officials, and ordinary citizens praised her composure, her leadership, and her steadfast courage. Social media continued to amplify the story, inspiring discussions about bias, accountability, and the standards we hold for those in authority. Maya returned to her daily life, to her duties as a colonel, to the missions she had dedicated herself to. But she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that moments like these, moments of testing, moments of confrontation, define not only the individual but the community, the institution, and the society as a whole. One evening, she drove down the same highway where the incident had occurred. The sky was painted in hues of gold and crimson, the sun setting beyond the horizon. The road stretched wide and empty ahead, a symbol of both reflection and possibility. She thought of Jasmine, whispered to herself, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite it. As she drove, the memories of the night, the fear, the confrontation, the calculated response, faded into clarity. What remained was the knowledge that standing firm, acting with precision, and maintaining integrity could change outcomes, influence perception, and inspire others. Colonel Maya Harrison, in uniform, in command, in life, continued forward, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of resilience, integrity, and justice prevailing. The night had ended, the world had witnessed courage, and the path ahead was illuminated, wide, and open. The story of that night, of the confrontation with Dalton, of the swift, precise response of the military police, and the unwavering commitment to justice, became more than an isolated incident. It became a narrative of accountability, a lesson in courage, and a testament to the power of integrity in the face of bias. The road stretched endlessly, golden under the setting sun, and Colonel Maya Harrison drove on. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. But with the quiet, unyielding strength of someone who knew that true courage lies in steadfastness, composure, and the refusal to be Days passed after the courtroom verdict, but the story did not fade. For Maya Harrison, life returned to the rhythm of military duties. Meetings, briefings, planning operations. Yet in the quiet moments, walking through the Pentagon halls, reviewing tactical reports, and standing before her team, she reflected constantly on what had occurred. That night on the highway had been more than a test of courage. It had been a reminder of responsibility, resilience, and the weight of command. She remembered the sequence of events in vivid detail. The harsh asphalt against her palms, Dalton's sneer as he ignored her credentials, the sudden relief and calculated precision of the military police arriving, the drone of helicopters overhead illuminating the darkness. Each memory was a lesson in composure and strategy. Fear had risen, yes, but it had not dictated her actions. Discipline had prevailed. Even in the Pentagon, analysts continued reviewing every detail of the incident. Reports were circulated, timelines meticulously mapped, video evidence stored in multiple secure locations. Every angle of Dalton's actions, every procedural misstep, and every moment of Maya's calm response were recorded, creating an example of accountability for officers nationwide. News coverage had shifted from the courtroom to society's response. Town halls, interviews, podcasts, and live streams discussed the incident in detail. Social media continued to buzz. Discussions about police conduct, racial bias, and military professionalism were trending across platforms. Maya's face became emblematic, not as a celebrity, but as a symbol of dignity, restraint, and integrity. In a quiet office, she reviewed a series of messages from young officers and cadets. "Thank you for showing us how to stand firm," one read. Another, "Your composure under fire, both literal and figurative, inspires me." She felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. Not pride. Satisfaction that her actions had served a purpose beyond herself, that they had provided a model of courage for others. Dalton, meanwhile, faced a growing isolation. His colleagues distanced themselves, his professional reputation shattered. The social and institutional consequences of his actions unfolded relentlessly. Every interview, every report, every social media post emphasized the lesson. Authority is not granted by position alone. It is earned through discipline, respect, and accountability. Maya returned home one evening, the sky painted in a palette of deep oranges and pinks. She parked her vehicle, stepped onto the porch, and gazed at the horizon. Jasmine was playing in the yard, her laughter cutting through the warm evening air. Maya felt a sense of calm she had not felt since that night on the highway. She knew that courage was not always about facing the external threat. It was about being an example, a steady guide, a protector of truth. Sitting with Jasmine later, she shared fragments of the experience, not the confrontation itself but the lessons learned, the importance of integrity, composure, and accountability. "Courage," she said softly, "is standing for what's right even when it feels like the world is against you. It's calmness under pressure. It's truth over assumption." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the weight of her mother's words, eyes wide with respect and understanding. In the weeks that followed, Maya continued her military duties, but she also engaged in outreach. Seminars on leadership, mentorship programs for young cadets, and workshops on integrity and professional conduct. Each session emphasized not only discipline and technical skill but also the importance of ethical conduct and respect for all people. The story of the highway incident became part of broader societal conversation. News features highlighted the swift Pentagon response, the military police's precise coordination, and the accountability imposed on Dalton. Documentaries analyzed the sequence of events, emphasizing lessons in leadership, restraint, and the ethical use of authority. Maya's role was central, not for fame, but as a demonstration of unwavering professionalism. One night, she returned to the highway where it had all begun. The air was still, the sky deep with stars, the moon casting a soft glow over the asphalt. She drove slowly, taking in the quiet stretch of road. She remembered Dalton, the confrontation, the adrenaline, the helicopters, the military police. And she remembered herself, calm, steady, composed. She had faced fear, bias, and aggression, and she had prevailed with integrity. The wind brushed her face as she reflected on the events. She thought of every soldier she had led, every mission she had commanded, and every principle she had upheld. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear. It was action in spite of it. It was calmness in the storm, clarity in confusion, and integrity when challenged. Maya parked by the side of the road and looked at the horizon. The sun rose slowly, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson, mirroring the night she had survived. In that moment, she felt the profound weight of her journey, not just the confrontation with Dalton, but the affirmation that standing firm, acting with clarity, and embracing truth could resonate far beyond a single night. Her phone buzzed. A notification from a young officer she had mentored. "Your story changed how I view leadership. Thank you." Maya smiled softly. These moments, she realized, were the true impact of her actions. The confrontation was over, Dalton held accountable, but the ripple effect of courage and integrity was only beginning. As she drove back to her base, she thought of the future. She thought of Jasmine, of cadets learning from her example, of a world where discipline, accountability, and courage are celebrated and expected. She whispered once more to herself, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite it. Courage is integrity in action." The highway stretched endlessly, illuminated by the rising sun. Colonel Maya Harrison drove on, steady, unwavering, a living symbol of resilience, professionalism, and justice prevailing. The world had witnessed her courage, learned from it, and the path ahead, though still challenging, was now illuminated by her example. And so, the night of fear, the confrontation, the chaos, and the eventual triumph became a story not of one officer. The sun rose slowly over Virginia, casting a golden glow across the Pentagon grounds. Colonel Maya Harrison stood at attention outside her office, reflecting on the past weeks. Every moment since the highway confrontation had been a lesson in resilience, strategy, and moral clarity. She realized that true leadership isn't defined by medals or rank, but by courage, integrity, and the ability to act decisively in moments of injustice. Inside the Pentagon, analysts and commanders continued reviewing the incident. Dashcam footage, bodycam evidence, GPS logs, and communication transcripts were now part of a broader training program. The incident was dissected not as a scandal, but as a case study in accountability and operational precision. Officers across the country studied her composure, her methodical response, and the efficiency of the military police support that ensured her safety. Maya walked through the halls, observing young officers and cadets moving with purpose. Their eyes occasionally flicked toward her, a mix of respect, curiosity, and inspiration. She remembered her own early days, uncertain, questioning, yearning for guidance, and understood the weight of example. Every decision, every calm reaction, every display of integrity mattered far beyond the immediate moment. On the news, the story continued to ripple outward. Analysts broke down the incident, highlighting lessons in leadership, bias prevention, and crisis management. Social media remained active, with thousands of posts praising her composure, the Pentagon's quick response, and the importance of accountability. Hashtags trended globally, #integrity prevails, #Colonel Harrison, #courage in action. Civil rights groups, military commentators, and civic organizations used the story to spark dialogue about respect, bias, and professional ethics. Maya returned home one evening, the sky tinged with the soft colors of dusk. Jasmine ran to greet her, laughter bubbling as it always did, yet her eyes now reflected awe and understanding. Sitting together on the porch, Maya shared what she could, not the adrenaline, the confrontation itself, but the principles learned. Discipline, integrity, courage, and accountability. "Mom," Jasmine asked, "how did you stay so calm?" Maya smiled gently. "It's not about being fearless. It's about understanding your power, respecting it, and using it responsibly. Courage is doing what is right, even when fear whispers in your ear." At the base, Maya resumed her duties, but she infused her work with lessons from the incident. Leadership seminars incorporated her experience. Mentorship sessions emphasized not only tactical skill but ethical responsibility. Young cadets learned that real courage comes from precision, patience, and integrity, not aggression or intimidation. Even Dalton's downfall continued to serve as a cautionary tale. His reputation destroyed, his career ended, he became a reminder of the consequences of arrogance, bias, and misuse of authority. Across law enforcement and military channels, the story reinforced the principle that accountability is non-negotiable. Maya often reflected on the night of the confrontation. She remembered the cold asphalt, the flashing lights, the roar of the helicopters, the coordinated formation of the military police. Each detail reminded her of one enduring truth: composure, clarity, and moral courage are the most powerful tools a leader can wield. On the highway once more months later, Maya drove slowly under a setting sun. The road stretched endlessly, golden and wide, a visual metaphor for the clarity and purpose she now felt. Memories of confrontation and fear lingered, but they had transformed into lessons of resilience. She whispered again to herself, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is acting in spite of it. Courage is integrity in motion." The world had watched her. It had learned from her actions. And the road ahead, though uncertain, was illuminated by her example. Maya paused at a familiar lookout point, gazing over the landscape. The wind brushed her face, the distant hum of military vehicles and base activity a constant reminder of her responsibilities. She thought of Jasmine, of every officer, of every citizen who would one day face a moment of fear or injustice. Her journey on that highway had become more than a personal victory. It had become a blueprint for courage and integrity in action. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she drove on, steady and unwavering. Her uniform reflected the fading light, a symbol of duty, honor, and resilience. The world had witnessed her courage, felt the ripple of her actions, and learned from the strength she embodied. In the distance, the road disappeared into a golden haze, endless and full of possibility. Colonel Maya Harrison, a leader, a mother, a symbol of integrity, continued forward, not just on the highway, but as a living testament to the power of courage, composure, and ethical action. And in that quiet, golden moment, she knew the journey was never truly over. Courage, integrity, and resilience are lifelong companions. And morning light spilled across the Pentagon grounds, soft and deliberate, as if the world itself paused to witness the aftermath of what had unfolded. Colonel Maya Harrison walked with deliberate steps, her polished boots clicking against the marble floors, her uniform immaculate, medals glinting faintly in the sunlight. Each stride reminded her of the highway that had changed everything, not just for her but for countless others who would witness the story. She paused by a window overlooking the training grounds, watching young cadets practice drills under the strict eyes of instructors. They moved with precision, but in some she recognized a spark: curiosity, uncertainty, the desire to act with integrity even under pressure. Her own journey had begun similarly years ago, when the lessons of discipline, courage, and clarity were taught not in words alone but in lived experience. The incident on the highway had left an indelible mark on the nation. Analysts dissected the sequence of events on news programs, highlighting not just Dalton's failure but the exemplary conduct of Maya Harrison. Podcasts, panels, and academic discussions debated the broader implications: accountability in authority, bias in law enforcement, and the quiet but profound power of composure in high-stakes situations. Maya reflected quietly in her office. She thought of fear, not the physical fear of confrontation but the subtle, insidious fear of being misunderstood, dismissed, or belittled because of assumptions. That fear had surged when Dalton had challenged her authority, but it had not dictated her actions. Instead, discipline and clarity had guided her, and in doing so, she had become an example of ethical courage. Her phone buzzed with messages from officers across the country. "Thank you for showing us the right way to act," read one. Another, "Your example will guide my actions for years to come." She smiled, feeling a quiet, profound satisfaction. Not pride, but a sense that the world could and would benefit from principled action. The highway, months later, remained a place of reflection. Maya drove slowly along the stretch where the confrontation had occurred. Sunlight glinted off the asphalt, the trees lining the road swaying gently in the breeze. Memories of that night, the lights, the helicopters, the precision of the military police, flooded her mind. Each detail was a lesson in resilience, precision, and integrity. She whispered to herself almost as a mantra, "Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting with integrity despite fear." At the Pentagon, she worked tirelessly to embed these lessons into leadership programs. Seminars, workshops, and mentorship initiatives incorporated her story, emphasizing ethical decision-making, accountability, and composure under pressure. Cadets learned that authority is not a tool for domination but a responsibility to protect, guide, and inspire. Even Dalton's downfall became part of the national conversation. His career ended, his reputation dismantled, his arrogance laid bare. But his failure also served as a reminder of what happens when authority is wielded without discipline, without respect, and without integrity. Across training academies, law enforcement agencies, and military institutions, his story became a cautionary tale, a counterpoint to Maya's example. Home brought its own quiet moments. Sitting with Jasmine on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Maya shared not the specifics of the confrontation, but the principles she had learned: resilience, composure, moral courage, and the responsibility to act with integrity even when the stakes are high. Jasmine listened intently, her eyes reflecting admiration and understanding. "Mom," Jasmine asked softly, "how do you know what's right in moments like that?" Maya took a deep breath, the evening wind brushing her face. "You trust your training, your experience, and your principles. You act with clarity and integrity. Courage is doing the right thing even when fear whispers in your ear. That is how you know." In the weeks and months that followed, the story of that night became more than a singular event. It became a touchstone for discussions on ethics, courage, and leadership. Media segments revisited the incident, emphasizing the precision of the military police, the coordinated Pentagon response, and Maya's unwavering composure. Social media amplified these lessons, turning a moment of crisis into a beacon of inspiration. At sunset, Maya drove again along the highway. The road stretched endlessly, bathed in gold and crimson light. The night of fear, confrontation, and chaos had become a lesson in resilience and integrity. She felt the weight of her experiences settle into quiet confidence. She was no longer just a participant. She was a symbol, a guide, a model for those who would face similar challenges. The journey was ongoing. Each mile she drove reminded her that courage, composure, and integrity were not one-time acts but lifelong companions. And in every action, every decision, every moment of calm clarity, the lessons of that night continued to ripple outward, touching lives, shaping perceptions, and inspiring others to act with honor. Colonel Maya Harrison, moving steadily down the highway, reflected on the path ahead. The world had witnessed her courage, the ripple effect of her actions had begun, and the light of integrity illuminated the road forward. She drove on, unwavering, a living testament to the power of principled action, resilience, and moral courage. The sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving a sky painted with hues of orange, pink, and violet. The road ahead, though still unknown, was brightened by the legacy she had created. Courage had been tested, integrity upheld, and justice served. And as the stars began to emerge, the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the Pentagon grounds in muted gold. Colonel Maya Harrison walked through the quiet corridors, her footsteps echoing softly. Outside, the training grounds were already alive with motion. Cadets practicing drills, instructors observing each movement, the discipline and focus palpable. Maya paused, watching the cadets, reflecting on the ripple effect of that highway incident. What had started as a moment of personal confrontation had transformed into a lesson for hundreds, perhaps thousands. Every officer trained in the months after now carried the story, internalizing its lessons. Courage in the face of fear, integrity when challenged, composure under scrutiny. Her mind drifted back to the highway. The flashing lights, the grip of Dalton's hands on her arm, the cold asphalt, the helicopters circling above. All moments now etched in clarity. Fear had been present, yes, but it had not dictated her actions. Instead, discipline, moral courage, and clarity guided every move. She understood now that courage is often quiet, unassuming, and deliberate. It is the choice to act rightly when the world expects panic, aggression, or submission. Maya returned to her office, reviewing footage one last time. Dashcams, body cams, GPS logs, every frame documented her composure, Dalton's missteps, and the coordinated precision of the military police. Beyond the tactical significance, she saw the human lesson: integrity endures. Arrogance, bias, and misjudgment cannot withstand methodical truth and accountability. Outside the Pentagon, the world continued to absorb the story. News networks revisited the incident, highlighting lessons in leadership and ethical conduct. Social media amplified her actions. Posts from officers, civilians, and educators praised her poise and courage. Hashtags like #CourageInAction, #Colonel Harrison, and hashtag integrity prevails trended globally. Every mention reinforced the impact, every share expanded the narrative, and every lesson reached new eyes. At home, Maya shared quieter moments with her daughter, Jasmine. Sitting on the porch as dusk settled, Maya reflected not on the confrontation itself, but on the principles that guided her actions. Courage, she explained, is not the absence of fear. It is understanding your responsibility, standing firm in truth, and acting with integrity when others expect you to waver. Jasmine listened intently, absorbing the weight of her mother's words, a spark of understanding lighting her young eyes. The highway months later remained a place of reflection. Maya drove slowly, absorbing the fading light as the road stretched endlessly before her. The night of confrontation, the chaos, and the eventual triumph had become symbolic. A reminder that clarity, courage, and composure can prevail even in the most threatening circumstances. Every mile reminded her that leadership is measured not only in tactical skill but in ethical resolve. Dalton's downfall had been swift and decisive, a lesson for all who would wield authority without integrity. Yet Maya knew the greater legacy was the example she set, steady, composed, and morally guided, even when the stakes were personal. Back at the Pentagon, seminars and workshops incorporated her story, emphasizing ethical decision-making, bias prevention, and accountability. Young officers and cadets were taught that authority is a privilege, responsibility, and moral test. They learned that courage is an internal compass, guiding action when external pressures are at their highest. The world watched, learned, and reflected. Media segments revisited the event, illustrating how composed leadership and ethical action can alter outcomes, inspire institutions, and influence public perception. Maya's narrative had become more than a personal story, it was a societal touchstone. As she drove home one evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in gold and crimson hues. The highway stretched endlessly, empty and serene. Memories of that night, once sharp with tension, had transformed into lessons in calmness, strategy, and integrity. Maya whispered to herself, "Courage isn't acting without fear, it's acting with honor despite it." She parked at a familiar overlook, gazing at the horizon. The world felt expansive, alive, and full of possibility. The confrontation, the chaos, the scrutiny, they had all become lessons in resilience and responsibility. Maya understood that every action, every decision, every moment of integrity would ripple forward, guiding those who followed. Colonel Maya Harrison, uniform gleaming in the fading light, drove on. Each mile a testament to discipline, courage, and moral clarity. The night had tested her. The world had witnessed her resolve. And as the first stars appeared above, she continued into the night, steady, composed. The early morning air was crisp as Colonel Maya Harrison stepped onto the Pentagon grounds. The sun had just begun its ascent, casting a golden glow over the sprawling campus. The quiet hum of activity was already underway, cadets practicing drills, officers moving with precision, and helicopters faintly droning in the distance. Each detail reminded Maya that life moved forward, yet lessons endured. She paused at a quiet overlook, reflecting on the highway incident that had captured national attention. Dalton's actions, the confrontation, the military police response, all had tested her in ways beyond physical skill. Fear had been present, but it had not governed her. Instead, clarity, integrity, and discipline had guided every step. She knew that real courage was quiet, deliberate, and principled. Inside her office, Maya reviewed the compiled reports, media coverage, and analysis from the Pentagon. Every frame, every transcript, every GPS log reinforced a clear truth: integrity prevails where arrogance fails. Dalton's downfall had become more than a personal victory, it had become a lesson for the nation, a blueprint for leadership, and a moral guidepost for those who would follow. Across the country, the story continued to resonate. Media outlets highlighted her composure, the military police precision, and the Pentagon's decisive response. Online discussions debated the societal implications, the importance of accountability in authority, confronting bias, and leading with integrity under pressure. Maya's example had become a beacon, inspiring officers, cadets, and civilians alike. At home, the evening sky glowed in soft shades of amber and rose as Maya shared quiet moments with her daughter, Jasmine. They sat on the porch, watching the world fade into twilight. Maya spoke not of confrontation but of principles. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she said. "It is the choice to do what is right even when fear whispers in your ear. It is clarity, integrity, and the willingness to stand firm." Jasmine nodded, absorbing her mother's words. In those moments, Maya realized that her actions were not just about justice in the moment, they were about guiding the next generation. Every decision she made, every demonstration of integrity, would ripple forward, shaping lives, guiding leaders, and inspiring courage. The highway months later became a place of reflection. Maya drove slowly along the stretch where confrontation had once threatened chaos. The trees swayed gently in the wind, the asphalt glinting faintly in the fading light. The memory of that night, helicopters circling, flashing lights, Dalton's aggression, was no longer tinged with fear but imbued with lessons. Each mile represented composure, strategic thinking, and moral courage. Back at the Pentagon, Maya's story became integrated into training programs, leadership seminars, and mentorship initiatives. Cadets learned not just tactics but ethical leadership, accountability, and the quiet strength of integrity under pressure. Her example demonstrated that authority is a responsibility, not a privilege, and that courage is as much internal as it is external. Even Dalton's downfall served as a powerful contrast. His arrogance, bias, and misuse of authority had led to public and professional ruin. Across military and law enforcement institutions, his story became a cautionary tale, reinforcing the importance of training, discipline, and ethical decision-making. As the sun began to set, Maya drove again along the highway. Golden light washed over the road, the horizon stretching endlessly ahead. Memories of confrontation had transformed into lessons of resilience and responsibility. She whispered to herself, "Courage is steady. Courage is clarity. Courage is integrity in action." She paused at a familiar overlook, gazing at the horizon. The world felt expansive, alive, and full of potential. Every decision, every act of discipline, every moment of composure would ripple forward, guiding cadets, mentoring officers, and inspiring generations. Colonel Maya Harrison drove on, uniform gleaming in the twilight, a living testament to resilience, leadership, and justice. The night had tested her. The world had witnessed her courage. And as the first stars appeared above, she continued into the night, steadfast, composed, unbroken. The sky above the Pentagon glowed with the early light of dawn, soft streaks of gold painting the expansive grounds. Colonel Maya Harrison walked deliberately through the corridors, each step echoing softly, her mind focused on the ripples that one night had created. The highway confrontation, Dalton's aggression, the military police response, it had all transformed into something greater than herself. A lesson in courage, integrity, and leadership that extended far beyond that singular night. She paused at a window overlooking the training grounds, watching cadets run through drills with precision. Each movement reminded her of the countless young leaders who would one day carry forward lessons in composure, accountability, and moral courage. It was no longer just her story, it was a blueprint for ethical leadership. Maya reflected on the incident itself. The adrenaline, the fear, the flashing lights, the helicopters hovering overhead, every moment had tested not only her tactical skill but her moral clarity. She had chosen composure over panic, clarity over assumption, and principle over personal emotion. She realized that true courage is not measured in confrontations alone but in the quiet, deliberate choices that define a leader. Back in her office, Maya reviewed reports, transcripts, and media coverage. Every frame, every recorded word, every procedural detail confirmed the lesson she had long known: integrity endures where arrogance fails. Dalton's professional and public downfall had underscored the importance of accountability. The nation had witnessed the consequences of bias and the power of steadfast ethical action. The media continued to highlight her actions. News outlets, podcasts, and online discussions analyzed the incident with scrutiny and admiration, emphasizing the military police's coordination, the Pentagon's rapid response, and Maya's composure. Social media amplified these lessons further, inspiring officers, cadets, and civilians alike. Hashtags such as #IntegrityInAction and #Colonel Harrison spread across platforms, reinforcing the impact of principled action. At home, Maya shared moments with her daughter Jasmine, emphasizing values rather than events. "Courage isn't about never feeling fear," she explained. "It's about standing firm in what's right even when the world tests you. It's clarity, integrity, and responsibility in motion." Jasmine listened, absorbing the weight of these lessons with growing admiration. The highway, months after the incident, had transformed from a site of tension into a space of reflection. Maya drove slowly along the stretch where confrontation had once threatened chaos. The trees swayed gently in the wind, the asphalt shimmering faintly in the light. The memory of that night, once tense and chaotic, had become a source of clarity. Each mile represented composure, ethical leadership, and resilience under pressure. At the Pentagon, Maya's story had become integrated into leadership programs, training sessions, and mentorship initiatives. Cadets learned not just tactics but also ethical responsibility, composure, and integrity. Authority was framed not as power to assert but as a responsibility to guide, protect, and inspire. Dalton's downfall served as a counterpoint, a cautionary tale demonstrating the consequences of arrogance, bias, and ethical failure. Across military and law enforcement institutions, his example reinforced the lessons Maya embodied. Discipline, composure, and ethical courage matter above all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the highway in warm hues of gold and crimson, Maya reflected on the journey. The confrontation, the chaos, the scrutiny, it had all become a testament to resilience, composure, and principled leadership. She whispered softly, "Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting rightly despite it. It is integrity in action, clarity in chaos, and steadfastness when tested." Colonel Maya Harrison drove on, her uniform reflecting the fading light, a symbol of strength, resilience, and moral authority. The night had tested her. The world had witnessed her courage. And as the first stars emerged above, she continued into the night, steadfast, composed, and unbroken. Every mile she traveled carried lessons for those who would follow, a living testament to courage, integrity, and leadership. The road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun and the rising stars above. Colonel Maya Harrison, a leader, mentor, mother, and symbol of principled action, drove onward. The horizon glowed with the first light of dawn, bathing the Pentagon and the highway beyond in warm gold. Colonel Maya Harrison stood at the edge of the base, looking out at the world she had protected, guided, and inspired. The night of confrontation, Dalton's aggression, the precise arrival of the military police, it was all behind her now, yet the lessons endured. She reflected quietly. Fear had been present that night, but it had not dictated her actions. Instead, clarity, discipline, and moral courage had guided every step. Courage, she realized, was a quiet choice, made in the tension between fear and responsibility. Integrity was not optional, it was essential. The world had watched, learned, and reacted. Social media buzzed with praise. Media outlets analyzed every detail. Leaders across military and law enforcement institutions highlighted her example in training sessions. The story had become a blueprint for ethical leadership, accountability, and composure under pressure. Maya drove down the highway one last time, the same stretch where confrontation had once threatened chaos. The sun rose, painting the asphalt with shades of gold and crimson. Memories of flashing lights, helicopters, and Dalton's aggression had transformed into lessons in resilience, strategy, and principled action. She whispered softly, "Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting with integrity despite it." At home, moments with her daughter Jasmine were now filled with reflection, guidance, and mentorship. "Mom," Jasmine asked, "how do you always know what's right?" Maya smiled. "You follow your principles. You act with integrity. You stay calm under pressure. Courage isn't loud, it's steady, deliberate, and principled." Back at the Pentagon, Maya's story was integrated into leadership programs, mentorship initiatives, and training seminars. Cadets learned that authority is a responsibility, that bias must be confronted, and that integrity underpins every decision. Dalton's downfall served as a cautionary tale. Arrogance and misuse of authority cannot withstand accountability. The highway stretched endlessly, serene and open as Maya drove forward. The wind brushed her face, the uniform glinting softly in the sunlight. Every mile carried lessons for those who would follow. The night of fear and confrontation had become a symbol. Composure, courage, and integrity could prevail even in the most challenging circumstances. Colonel Maya Harrison reflected on her journey, from a confrontation that tested her personally to a story that inspired a nation. She had faced fear, bias, and aggression with calmness, clarity, and discipline. The world had witnessed her courage, absorbed the lessons, and embraced the principles she embodied. As the sun climbed higher, casting the road in bright light, she felt the weight of responsibility and the quiet satisfaction of knowing her example would ripple forward. Leaders, cadets, civilians, they would all carry a piece of that night, guided by integrity, composure, and courage. The road stretched beyond sight, infinite and full of possibility. Colonel Maya Harrison drove on, not for recognition, not for triumph, but because steadfast courage, disciplined action, and ethical leadership are the compass by which the world moves forward. And in that quiet, golden light, the story came full circle. A night of fear had become a lifetime of lessons. A confrontation had become a legacy. And as the world continued